You're listening to This Naked Mind with Annie Grace.
Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. And we are going to jump right in the middle of the story to my interview with my husband, Brian Jensen. We got talking for a long time, so this is part 2, and I hope you enjoy. And then my story is that marijuana became legal. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, I'll do this. And I think my drinking diminished a little bit for a little while, but then I just started doing both at the same time.
I would say, like, even so before that, even like I do recall you being very upset if I'm like, let's just take a night off. Let's not drink tonight, and you would get, like, in my words, irrationally upset. I'm like, what is she so upset about? Let's just take a break. Let's give our bodies a break. And so, yeah. Then you started doing that stuff. And
I couldn't imagine not drinking for one single night. I couldn't even if I got sick, like, I still wanted to drink. It wasn't like, I remember for you, it was a little different. Like if you felt sick or something, like had a cold, you weren't going to be the one to be like, oh, let's still drink alcohol. Like there was nothing that was going to keep me from, I think I drank every day for like probably 6 years, except, brief period of time where I was trying to replace it with weed. But like, because I was like, oh, this is healthier. This is better. But like literally, I think it was every day. And I remember starting to buy boxes of wine at that point in time because I was unwilling to endure the mental load of having drank a whole bottle by myself. Oh, because you didn't drink every night either. That was interesting. Most nights, but
yeah, probably most nights. But yeah, sometimes I just wouldn't want to.
So then what? Then we started kind of traveling and living for stints of time over in the UK. And that was really boozy. It was like boozy times 10.
Yeah.
It's like the booziest.
I was really boozy, and I would just drink at home. I'd be home with the kids. So sometimes you'd be working late or going to a function, or you'd have to go to another country or something, and I'd be at the flat with the kids. And I would drink every night then, pretty much. I think that was like part of it. It's like, oh, this is life. This is what I do. This is how I get, maybe a little bit how I get through the evening. Like it could be kind of, I don't want to say boring, maybe a little less stimulating.
Less than 2 and less than 4 or less than 5. I mean, they were both under 5.
Yeah. Well, one of them turned 5 there and one was 2. So, and we were staying in a place that was like not that kid friendly. It was like close to the financial district or something. And I'd take them to lunch, and all these guys in dark suits would look at me weird, and as my kids spilled their ramen. But yeah, it wasn't super. It was fun. It was cool because we got to see another country and experience things, but it was also kind of weird and stressful and just awkward. So yeah, I just started drinking every night, and that was it. We go buy wine, and that would be the evening. Put the kids to bed. I remember
celebrating Father's Day over there, and I remember finding a card for you that said it's not drinking alone if the kids are home.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah. I'm like, all right, there we go. I remember so we went back there a different time. We were in a little more kid-friendly place, and so we could walk to this park, things like Paddington Recreation Area, and the kids could play sports and have fun, and they had a little cafe, and you could just buy a little wine. So I would drink in noon or 2 in the afternoon, which was not that normal for me, unless it was like Sunday brunch or whatever. I would drink at night. So yeah, I started to increase my intake there as well, like on my own. So most of my alcohol consumption really revolved around what I was doing, or you specifically instigating. And there I was like, I want this. I'm gonna go get this, and I'll do it in the middle of the day. Whatever. I'm gonna go do it right now. So
do you remember
an uptick?
They would let you drink in the movie theaters?
Oh yeah. That was cool.
Of course, that's not a big deal. You can do that in the US, but like at that point in time,
they didn't do it back then. Yeah.
So we were like,
that's right.
This is great. We can take our kids to like movies and get drunk. It's perfect.
I remember you bought a bottle of wine and brought it into like the theater, like live performing arts, like a musical, like Miss Saigon, or I don't know what we were saying, but like a musical, like a Broadway style musical, West End or whatever.
To be fair, I didn't sneak it in. I bought it at the vendor thing in
the whole bottle.
lobby. They saw the whole
I
bottle.
remember like, oh no, the lights start blinking. It's like, oh, we got to go back in. And he's there like just going straight at the bottle. Not no
Oh,
cup,
maybe we
nothing.
couldn't go back in. So maybe I just chugged the bottle. I barely remember that night. I know what night you're talking about, but
Yeah.
that was fuzzy, blurry night.
Fuzzy evening.
That we have pictures from that night. And I was like, I was definitely in my drunkorexia, which I didn't know that term at the time, but it was like where my head was too big for my body because I was literally existing on coffee and red wine. I was not
Caffeine
even
and alcohol. How was your diet?
it was
For a while. Yeah.
almost I just didn't even have an appetite. I was such a disaster. I was probably 30 pounds lighter than I am right this minute.
Thanks. Not good.
So
Yeah, so that was a lot. Remember, and you got the story. You've told a million times about spilling beer in the line with our kids, on our kids, in for the London Eye or aquarium or something.
yeah, how is that story from your perspective?
I was so mad. It was like morning, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was like 10:30 in the morning
And
because
you brought these giant cans
those
of beer or something.
40s so that I could drink it later. I had been
Yeah, I'm like, what are you doing? And you like cracked them open in line with our kids and spilled them all over. I'm like, I almost left. I'm like, I'm leaving.
they were going to search our bags. And so I went to get it out and it dropped and it spilled.
Is that what happened?
I didn't actually drink it that morning. But then,
Oh,
despite that disaster, and despite you being mad, despite the kids being soaked in beer, I remember after we got off the London Eye, we went, my dad was there too, and we went directly to that restaurant and I immediately ordered cocktails and had at least 2 or 3.
yeah. There were a few times, and I don't actually remember what those instances were, but I just remember being like so mad. I'm just like, I am so mad right now. Like I could just scream or I could just leave. I'm like so pissed off. I just want to get away from you right now because of your drinking.
Brutal. Well, I'm sorry.
Well, you're forgiven.
Thanks.
You pulled yourself together. Good job. Just kidding.
Well, so then this is pretty near the end of my drinking, actually.
Yeah, moved back to Colorado. We started hanging out. Well, we had already been hanging out with those friends that had kids like the exact same ages as our kids, our boys, 2 boys at the time. And we all just drank a lot. We just get together, drink a lot, talk, maybe watch sports. So we do that. And then, yeah, then you were pretty much finishing it up.
Yeah. Then I stopped drinking. So when I told you, I was like, I don't think I'm going to drink anymore. What did you think?
Didn't believe it at all. Like not even a tiny bit. I'm like, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. You came out of your office, and I think you maybe even started getting the bottle, or maybe just looked me in the eyes, and you're like, Brian, if you want to get drunk, you're all serious. If you want to get drunk with me, tonight's the last night. I think I'm done. And I was like, okay, see you tomorrow, same time, same place. We'll have some more wine. We'll keep this thing going. I didn't believe you at all. And then it lasted for a little while. I'm like, oh, okay, But then so it went from like, I don't believe you at all. And I was happy that you were slowing down, but I was not happy that you were stopping. Once I believed that you were
By a
going to stop.
little
So it was
while,
like,
let's just clarify that to be almost 9 years, but
well, it's still it's ongoing now, but I didn't know that at the time. I'm
right.
saying,
But it sounded
you
like then it
stopped for
lasted for a little while as if I went back to it. But I
well,
just
no,
started.
so my part of the story is you had stopped at the beginning of your stopping. You had
Okay.
stopped for a little while and you kept stopping. You stayed stopped. But for me, I had a switch then. So at first I was like, okay, good. I'm glad because it was too much. I knew it was not good. And then I kind of switched and I was like, hold on. You can't just stop. I'm like, you really stopping? I'm like, I'm still going. I remember telling him, like, fine, this is your deal. Like, I'm going to keep drinking. You're not going to stop me.
I'm going to drink the rest of my life, just so you know.
Yeah. Just I was laying it out there. Tell you how it is.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, I was like, yeah, good for you. That's your thing. And I was even a little bit like, I don't know. I wasn't mad, but I was like a little defiant, a little annoyed. Like, what are you doing? Like, why do you have to go so far? Can't you just like can't you just like
Or a
tune it
middle
in,
road.
let's just go right in the middle here. Let's just not change because that's what we did. We drank and we would hang out with friends and we would drink. And that's what we were. I'm like, you can't just stop. So I was
And
annoyed. I went from one annoyed, like I was annoyed on this side of things, like it's way too much. And then I was annoyed, like now you're stopping. Now you're just gonna do that. So that was annoying. And I kept drinking.
well, the other annoying thing had to be that I was also became a preacher.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And when you're doing all your research, I think even before you stopped, you were like, tell me everything. And you were so serious. Like you'd be like, you come to me just like crying and being like, did you know some stat? And you tell me the stat. I'm like, I did not know that. Are you okay? And like, you know,
It's so
anyway,
depressing.
so it was rough for you. But yeah, so and you just go all in. Like you won't like this is how you are. You're just like if you want like anything, you're gonna do shopping for flour, to make cake. You're just gonna figure out all the kinds of flours to make a cake and you're gonna research them and figure out the pros and cons of each kind of flour. And so, but like you got real, real deep, obviously, in the alcohol thing and like researching it and all that stuff. And so you would share it all with me and I'd be like, are we talking about this again? We'd be like, let's go on a walk and talk about alcohol, or let's go to dinner and talk about alcohol. Let's hey, we put the kids to bed, let's talk about it right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how can you always talk about it? So anyway, yeah, you do that. And then I kept drinking, but my intake took a drastic decline once you were not, I guess, instigating might be the right word, when you're not uncorking the wine and offering it. So I really cut down a lot, but I was not planning on stopping. And I'd hang out. My mom would come up when you were out of town. We'd watch the kids, and I'd just drink wine with dinner, drink wine if I cooked dinner, drink wine whenever I wanted to. So, but it wasn't like every night necessarily. Like I wasn't hard every night drinking till I got drunk or anything like that. I just wanted to keep doing it. And so I did that. And then you made me read your book. You're like, hey, will you please proofread this?
Let me ask about one other part before we get into the book, because I did drink again.
Yep, that's right.
I got drunk in front of the camera. So how crazy did you think I was that night when I was like, hey, Brian, guess what I'm going to do tonight? I haven't drank for months.
I thought it was so dumb. I'm like, what are you doing? That was probably one of those instances I mentioned where I got really annoyed with you. That was probably one of them. Maybe. I don't remember for sure.
Oh, that's
but so I was funny. Like, what is going on? You had like this little makeshift studio in our bedroom or something over in the corner, and you're like drinking and going in front of the camera. And I'm like, what is happening?
I put like a curtain behind me, put my camera on the tripod.
I thought it was so dumb. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's just gonna start drinking again. What are you doing? Because conventional wisdom back then was, it was different than it is now. There's been some strides, in how this all works, I think, and how people understand it. But back then, I was like, oh crap, you touch that to your lip, you're done again. And I think, maybe that is the case for some people. That was not the case for you. But I didn't know that. And so I was nervous. And I just thought it was so stupid. I'm like, what are you doing? This is a bad move. I'm like, all those stats you just told me? Why are you going back into this?
Right.
So yeah, I know.
You just thought it was kind of an excuse. You're like,
yeah, I did. I thought it was an excuse. I mean, you just want to get drunk. Just call it what it is, fine. And I was like, and I'm like on this roller coaster kind of in my own mind. You're doing your thing. But for me, I'm like, you drink too much. Oh yeah, you're going to stop, but I don't believe it, but at least you'll cut back a little. And then you're like, oh, now I'm mad that you're stopping. And now you're drinking again. Like I don't know. Maybe it's just me. You probably couldn't win. It's like, I was going to be mad no matter what. Unless you like just did what I did. Like if you like mirrored me, then I'd be like, all right, you're perfect. But I was all up and down, and I thought that was really stupid, even though I was annoyed that you'd stopped drinking. So yeah, I was all over the place, I guess, a little bit.
Well, it wasn't like, I think you wouldn't have thought it was stupid if I was like, hey, I kind of want to have a glass of wine with you tonight at dinner. Like I think that
like, all right, sweet.
In your mind.
Like I'm gonna go drink a whole bottle.
I'm gonna get 2 bottles. I bought 2 bottles. I couldn't drink 2 bottles. I got sick on the first one because I hadn't been drinking, but like I bought 2 bottles and I was like, I'm gonna get drunk by myself. Can you watch the kids?
Yeah. I was
Keep
probably annoyed at
going.
that too. I'm like, oh geez, gotta watch the kids again. Gonna get drunk and watch the kids.
Oh my gosh, what a night.
Yeah.
Such a
Yep,
vivid night.
that was really weird. Very weird night.
Alcohol experiment. I was just wanting to experiment. Okay, so then after that, so that's we had to layer that in because this was before I hadn't written the book at that time. I hadn't written. I mean, I'd done my research and I had
Journals and whatnot.
journals and I'd kind of cobbled it together. I think people were reading some of my research, but like I hadn't written a book at that point in time when I did.
So you were writing the book, I think, and you would ask me questions like, hey, do you think it's okay if I tell this story? And I'll change the names of these people or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. Don't ask me. And so then at one point you're like, hey, we just read the book. So you had finally gotten through everything. You decided to write the book or put all your journals into book form or whatever. And then you're like, hey, we read it. I'm like,
yeah, it was 24 hours before it was going to go live on Amazon, self-published.
Okay.
And I just felt like I needed you to read it before, because I remember we were watching The Matrix and I was like about to self-publish. And I just had this like vision while we were watching it of like this, like, I don't know if it was like a spark or a like electricity going through the wires, but I was like, this is going to set off something that I can't stop. Like that was the knowing inside of me. I was like, because I had just finished reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this, it really had come together. What was just a bunch of messy research had been like, oh, this is good. I was impressed with like what had come together. And I was like, oh, and my editor had stopped drinking on accident. And then we'd given it to a few friends and some of them had stopped drinking kind of on accident. And so I felt this knowing like this is going to set something off. And I was like, I can't publish it if it doesn't have your blessing. That was inside me. So then I gave it to you and you had a really tight deadline. You had to read it before it went on.
Yeah. And I read it like that day, I think. I read the whole thing. It's not normal for me.
And read.
Yeah, I went on the back deck, read it. I was kind of annoyed. I'm like, I gotta read this. Like, it's like I have homework. Sort of. But I was also excited to do it. So I was fine with it, but there's a little bit of me like, oh boy, chore. So
I think it's worth saying that through all this annoyance, you're pretty much nothing but kind to me the whole time. So anyway.
Thank you.
Whatever it was, you kept it in.
It wasn't that bad, but I was like, would I rather read this or go do something fun? And I was like, but I read it. So I went up and I was like, well, because I think part of it was because I'm like, I got to look for typos. I got to look for incorrect like sentence structure, grammar. And like,
plus you just thought it was going to be a shitty book, man, because.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. And so, I just thought like, I got to watch out for you. I got to do all the proofreading typo, even though like, I think we had an editor already do that, but I was like, I'm on it. Don't worry. But like, this is a job. This is not fun. So then I went out back and I read it on the deck and I kept reading it. And I read the whole thing and fed back about like people we knew in the stories and how you changed names and stuff like that. And yeah, it was already pretty well edited. Good job. And I read it. I'm like, yeah, that's really good, And I read the whole thing in one day, which is good for me. And
you didn't fall asleep.
No, maybe once. No, just kidding. Yeah, I didn't fall asleep or anything. But I didn't that was the thing. I didn't like make a decision. I'm not like, wow, I've read the book. I will stop drinking now. Like,
and for the record, I didn't have that expectation of you. I just wanted you to read the book.
That wasn't the plan. Yeah, that was just like, I'm gonna read the book.
I had no expectation that you would stop drinking. You told me,
and I did plan. Yeah, I think I told you before. I'm like, fine, I'll read it, but I'm not gonna stop drinking. Just like when you told me you were gonna stop, I'm like, all right, fine, but I'm not. And so I read it and I was like, yeah, this is good. I like it. This is actually pretty good. It's well thought out. It's well structured. It's got good stories, all that stuff. And so I was like, yeah, it's good. I think you can publish it. That was a big compliment.
You are still the smartest person I know. So
you're so sweet. So yeah, I read it. I'm like, yeah, it's really good. And yeah, go ahead and publish it. But I hadn't thought in my mind even at that point, and I certainly didn't say anything to you like, hey, I'm going to stop drinking. I was still staying the course on my path. And then, I remember it was a while in terms of like weeks or months where I'm like, wow, I don't think I've drank, and then like my friends came over and we drank some wine. I'm like, I had like 2 glasses of wine. I'm like, ooh, or 3 glasses of wine or something. I started feeling it, which was a little uncommon. You look like you want to say something.
So the first time I remember, because we just didn't talk about it again. And if we'd go out to a concert, I'd buy you, I'd like be like, what are you drinking? And I'd get your drink. And so, and I'd already not been drinking by that time. By the time the book published, it was like well over a year, or actually it was almost a year. I wrote that book. Like I researched and wrote it before I stopped. So like, anyway, so it had been at least a year, maybe longer. And the first time I really remember was you went to a game in Fort Collins.
That was like my last time.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, no, actually, no, I think it was my last time. Yeah, it was the last night at the old stadium, which I think was like 2016, maybe. I might have to look that up. But
That's
yeah,
right.
so I went with friends, went to a football game, and I remember like they're like, "Here, you want a drink?" And I think I even took a beer or something, and like I was nursing it. I'm like, "This tastes terrible." Like when you stop drinking for a while, at least for me, like it doesn't taste that good anymore. I mean, it didn't taste good when you first started, so I guess that makes sense. But like I like had a beer, and like drinking a little bit, like, this is bad beer. And it's not like our college is in a town full of like beer snobs. So it's beer, like our university has a brewing degree. Like it's one of the first ones that was out there. This is like,
New Belgium Brewery, Fort
7, 8
Collins.
years ago. Yeah, New Belgium Brewery. Like it's just a big deal. And there's other ones up there. It's good. It's a good beer scene, I guess. Uh, and so I'm like, this beer is not very good. I was nursing it, and the guy's like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you drinking?" I'm like, I am, I think. Well, maybe I'm not. I'm like, wait, when? I don't when was the last time I drank? And it had been like a while. And by that, I mean maybe a few months or longer that I could
We
remember
honestly have no
drinking one.
idea. Like neither one of us have any
I don't
idea.
even remember. Yeah, I don't remember.
No idea.
And I just remember not wanting to drink much. And I had a beer, and they're like, "Here, have another one." Trying to get your beard up before you go into the game, and then drink more. That's at the game. And I didn't want it. I'm like, nope, no thanks. I had one, and my friends are kind of like, "Why aren't you drinking?" And I'm like, I don't even know. I just don't like it. I don't want to. And that was like, I think that was the last time I had more than like a sip. That was like, and it was only like a beer or two. Like I could drive home. So, and the game's like 3 or 4 hours. So like I went and hung out, and then we had pizza afterwards. And so it was like 6 hours after I even had that one beer or whatever. It's like, I'm just going to go home, which I hadn't
And
planned
that
on
was
doing. And then,
so shocking is because you called me at 11 at night. I was fully expecting to be drunk, staying at your friend's house in your college town. And you're like, I'm driving home. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you okay to drive? Like, what are
yeah.
you?
And it's like
Don't drive home.
hour and 45 minutes home. It's not like it's across town. It's like, almost 2 hour drive. You're like, why are you doing that? It's like already 11. And I'm like, no, I feel great.
I was like,
So yeah,
weird.
I came home, and I think that was like the last time I ever had more than like a sip of somebody's drink.
Just
Was
because they
that
want
game.
people always
Last
want.
game at Hughes Stadium in Fort Collins. Yeah, CSU
Mm.
football, baby.
Well, I didn't even know we were gonna have like a sort of date. So what is that? 6 years or something?
I'm like, Google that.
Yeah,
Whoops.
Google it because I'm curious. So let's see. We're recording this at the end of October 2023. I stopped drinking in December 2014. And so if you stopped drinking in 2016, about 2 years after, it's interesting because yeah, the timeline and the counting was so irrelevant when you went through the mindset shift, which happened to you very subconsciously because you weren't even conscious of it. But it's honestly some of my favorite reviews for the book is like, I stopped drinking because
So
I
like
read
me,
this with my sister and I stopped drinking and I don't even like beer. What am I going to do at the bachelor party? Thanks a lot. 5 stars. It's like, oh
yeah.
man.
Yeah,
It's,
and I remember we went on the field afterwards. Yeah, and so like it looks like it was, I think it's November 19th of 2016. So we're coming up on 7 years.
so 2 years
So that
after
was, and
me.
we all like stormed the field. I don't even think it was like that big of a win, but it was like last game here. Let's go down on the field and everything. Yep, I think that was
Probably
it.
had been drinking pretty little for a while, but we have no
Yeah,
idea because it
yeah.
just has become so irrelevant, like so irrelevant. Such a cool thing. Amazing. Thank you for this interview. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks inviting me to your podcast, Annie.
Well,
It's been a joy.
I waited till it got about 100,000 downloads an episode. So, I knew you were a
Wait,
big headline name. So I was like, I
people are
gotta
gonna hear
wait.
this?
Lots of people are listening.
Oh boy. I apologize for everyone who had to endure that. If you made it to this point, thank you. Thank you for sticking with us.
It was a little
deserve a
bit
medal.
painful at the beginning because I was like, I don't remember this. Do you remember that? It's hard to think back and try to think through. I mean, we've been together 18 years and then we dated almost 4 years before that. So we started dating in 2001, right? 2001.
I believe that is correct. Was that like closing in on 22 years here?
So I have to ask you the final question, which might be a little silly because I think you might be my first. I might do a few of these, but you might be because a lot of people on my team accidentally stop drinking because I don't need to hire anybody who doesn't drink because it's like irrelevant to me. But people, they just accidentally stop. So I might do a few accidental stoppages because it's kind of fun. But you're my first one, so I don't know how this question is going to go. But the question I ask at the end of every one of these podcasts is, if you could go back in time you could go back in time and tell Brian who was sleeping in his car or Brian who was puking in Central Park, or you could just tell Brian who was, anyway, I don't know, just pick a point in your history. And if you're going to go back and tell yourself, your past self, what your life is like now, what would you say?
Okay. I think I will go back and talk to the Brian who didn't want to stop when you were stopping. Because the Brian before that didn't even think about it really. It wasn't contemplating anything. But so I'll talk to the Brian when you were stopping, and I'm like, I'm not stopping, that kind of guy. And I would say, like, I just feel like we've gotten so much more done when we stopped drinking. Like, there's a ton of benefits, I'm sure, health benefits, like feeling good about yourself and all that stuff. But for me, it's almost like really practical. Like our lives have been so different since we stopped drinking, not just because this is like what we do every day, but like exercise, travel, going on this adventure of starting a business, like the amount of stuff that we've done since stopping drinking that we would not have done. Like we were just in sort of the hypnotic rhythm of drinking and doing it again the next night. Like we weren't trying to make giant strides in our personal development and personal well-being, but like the ride that we've been on since we've stopped drinking has been remarkable. It's been fascinating, it's been fun, it's been crazy, it's been scary, but it's been like you do all those things. So it's just like you're just I enjoy life more without it. I remember life more without it, and we do more. So it's good for us for sure. Good for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like for me, for sure, because I was using it so much to self-medicate, once I stopped, it was kind of like stopping was actually the first step in what I think is a lifelong journey of just like back to yourself, undoing. I think we're just naturally joyful, happy people as human beings. I don't think you have to look further than a 2 or 3-year-old to know that's true. And then we pile all sorts of false belief and crap on ourselves, and then we get stressed and traumatized by whatever's happening in our lives, and then we self-medicate. And it isn't until we stop self-medicating sometimes that we get to start to wake up from that trance. And yeah, it's very cool. Anyway, that's very cool.
Much more enjoyable ride, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Without the alcohol.
Yeah. And it's funny, like is there anything in you that misses it ever?
Almost never. Every once in a while, I'm like, maybe it'd be nice to have a glass of red wine with a meal. That's like the only thing that I could possibly ever even think about, to be honest. Like beer just sounds horrible to me now, which was a big thing for me back then. I drank it a lot. But no, that doesn't sound interesting at all. So that's the only thing that would ever creep in, but not really.
So interesting.
And I haven't tried it in ages, so I have no idea.
What keeps you from trying it?
I don't know. It's not like I don't really know, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem appealing enough. If I did anything, I'd want to do like a zero proof one because I don't want to do like a headache and like
Well, I heard Guinness just came out with a zero proof beer, which you just said beer sounds terrible, but I
not do that.
Try that.
No, not it would only be red wine, if anything ever. And I'd want to be zero proof. I don't want to deal with the other crap that comes along with it. But
don't want to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. I've never had non-alcoholic wine either.
Yeah, me either. Which means it might taste terrible like beer does now, but
might taste grape juice. I don't know. Maybe we have a taste test on another podcast. Probably not.
Right, cool.
Probably going to fall out of our brains as soon as we stop this and go make dinner, which we should do. So
yeah, should go make dinner for the kids.
Yeah, awesome. All right,
I'll see you out there in a few minutes.
Otherwise, we didn't have to record this with the microphones. So I'll be over to the house in a minute.
I'll see you there in like 5 minutes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're ready to see how This Naked Mind can help you on your personal health and wellness journey and want to learn more, go to thisnakedmindpodcast.com to learn what your next best step is. Again, that's thisnakedmindpodcast.com. We have all of our free resources, programs, social links, and more available for you there. Plus, if you have your own naked life story to share, you can submit it there as well. Until next week, stay curious.